Do you find yourself constantly grabbing convenience food or hitting the drive-through because of your busy schedule? Are you tired of your clothes not fitting and wish you felt more like yourself again? Does the word diet make you cringe because of past failed attempts that left you hungry and deprived? I'm Alisha, a wife, mom, fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle coach for women. After years of dieting, losing, and regaining the same weight, I realized I needed a new approach. I was burnt out from trying to be everything to everyone and chasing a number on the scale. To truly show up as the wife and mom I wanted to be and to finally find freedom in my health meant redefining my relationship to food, exercise, my body, and most importantly, to myself. I discovered the power of brain-based nutrition, fitness, habits, and routines to create a healthy lifestyle without restriction or deprivation. And now I'm excited to share everything I've learned with you. If you're ready to follow a simple brain-based nutrition and fitness plan built on habits and routines designed for busy moms and women, you're in the right place. Let's do this together.
If you are anything like Alicia 10 to 15 years ago on her fitness journey, there is a high likelihood that you are keeping mental tabs on all the things, on your calories, your food, exercise, and it really is just taking up so much mental bandwidth. It is living rent free in your brain, and maybe you feel this quiet judgment, or maybe not so quiet judgment of yourself every time you mess up or miss a session. Now, in today's episode, we're not going to be diving into all of that, but we are really going to be honing in and looking at one specific area of fitness. There is this number in exercise science called VO2 max. You've likely heard it on other podcasts or mentioned here. And it's basically a measure of how efficiently your body can take in and use oxygen. And researchers really consider this one of the strongest predictors of how long we're going to live. A study out of Cleveland Clinic followed over 122,000 adults. So that's a pretty big sample size. And they found that the fitter you are, the lower your risk of dying during the study period was, full stop. And that benefit never kept capped out. So there was no point where being fitter actually stopped helping you, not even at that elite end. So, yes, your cardiovascular fitness is not a vanity metric. It's a metric that really matters actually a lot. And it can be equated to more of like a life expectancy dial. Now, I know we might be throwing you for a loop here because we talk so much about strength training and the importance on that for muscle mass, or the importance rather of muscle mass and building muscle for bone, and all of that is, and absolutely super important. But I think somewhere along the line of our focus on resistance training, and not just for us on the show, but maybe in general in the fitness world, we've kind of swung to the other extreme and maybe talking about the importance of cardio as well, right? So it's not either cardio all the time and no strength training, or strength training all the time and no cardio. All of it really works together to be a part of kind of this healthy, balanced exercise diet, if you will. Now, if your gut reaction is kind of thinking, okay, this is just going to be one more thing that I have to be perfect at, I want you to actually just notice that knee jerk reaction, because that flinch, that immediate jump to all or nothing is really going to be one of the big things that we're kind of navigating and talking through today. Because here is the twist that nobody is telling you: the research on how much of cardio fitness or cardio exercise you actually need might be way more forgiving than what the fitness industry is wanting you to believe. If you've ever felt like you've needed a PhD in exercise science just to know where to start, that confusion is really exactly what the Fit and Fueled Foundation walks you through. It's kind of this nice starter place to really just help you strip it all down to the big rocks that we talk about all the time on the show. If you want more information on that, the link is in the show notes, but we'll get to more on that later. So, you've likely heard that you need strength training for bone density and muscle mass. Again, we talk about that all the time here on the show, and that is everywhere, especially for women kind of in that perimenopause season, which I'm so thankful for. You've also probably heard that you need to include some HIIT training for metabolic health. Maybe you've heard you need zone 2 specifically so that you can build your aerobic base and for your mitochondrial health. You've maybe even heard that we're trying to hit those 10,000 steps every day. We've got to get stretching and mobility work. And then if you're in perimenopause, maybe it feels like there's an entirely separate protocol out there just for you. Now, if we stack all of that up, maybe you get somewhere between 6 to 10 hours a week of recommended different kinds of exercise and movement, which I get if you're a mom running a household, if you've got a job or a business, your marriage, you're taking care of aging parents, or all of it at once. It can sometimes feel really overwhelming and out of reach. It can feel like there's not enough hours in the day for the version of fitness that you think you're supposed to be doing. And then that kind of triggers that little story inside that we can't fit it all in. Maybe it sounds like I'm already failing at this, or I can't do it all. I can't do it right. I can't do it perfectly. Why bother at all? And that's the all or nothing trap we talk about so often on this show, and it doesn't just show up in the way that we approach food. It shows up in the way that we approach our calendars too, our workouts, every single area. And this is the part that maybe nobody says out loud because we're afraid of what it would make us sound like to other people, is that somewhere along the way, the fitness industry, the wellness industry decided that more is always better. More volume, more intensity, more hours, more supplements, more optimization. And more kind of just became the whole personality of fitness culture. And more, if we're being honest with ourselves, can sometimes feel exhausting. It can feel out of reach. It could be the thing that keeps smart, capable women starting and stopping over and over and just kind of on that perpetual cycle of starting and then burning out and quitting and kind of going way off the deep end and then cycling back through that again. So today we're asking a different question, not necessarily how do I do more, but what is the least amount of the right thing that's actually going to move the needle? And that question has an answer that's backed by real research, not just hacks that I made up. So I want to be honest with you about something. I have stood in my kitchen with the color coded plans taped to the fridge, Mondays for strength, Tuesday for HIIT, Wednesday is the zone 2 walk, Thursday strength again, Friday intervals, and somewhere in there trying to actually do the things that I do when I'm not working out, taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, making sure everybody has what they need. And I remember looking at the fridge on a Wednesday, maybe when the walk didn't happen or the workout didn't happen quite as planned, and just feeling like such a failure, feeling like, if I can't do this perfectly, I might as well not even do it at all. And then just kind of giving myself that little mental permission slip to just wash the rest of the week out. So it's like the entire plan has failed just because one little piece slipped. That feeling is not a personal failing necessarily. Maybe it's more of a math problem where we're kind of handed all of these different guidelines, which are great. And in a perfect world, we would all be able to follow every single health guideline out there perfectly. But that is really not the way that it works when we've got a real busy life, right? We've got a full schedule. We've got all these different things that are pulling for our attention and our energy. And for a lot of us, at least in the beginning, it might feel like you're simply just trying to get your workouts in around all the other things in your life. So I want to kind of bring forward what some of the data says in terms of like the minimum requirement. So this isn't necessarily us looking to just do the bare minimum and reach for the lowest level, because if you're here, if you're listening to the show, you know that I tend to be kind of a high achiever. A lot of my clients that I'm working with have a lot of those same tendencies. So for us, usually our problem isn't doing too little, right? Like we almost naturally just default to the other end. But sometimes just having like, what is that minimum baseline required to move the needle and to just be able to do that or have that to fall back on when the rest of life, the rest of our days is crazy. We're not going for like the Instagram or the Pinterest perfect version. We're looking at the peer reviewed version. And it really can change the way that you approach your fitness. I know for me, it has definitely changed how I coach every single client that I work with. So let's get into it. Here's study number one. Researchers pulled together 28 separate studies looking specifically at VO2 max. Remember, that's that number we mentioned at the top of the episode. They looked at the training and then split them into three buckets by intensity: easy effort, moderate effort, and hard effort. Now, it's important to know that's obviously going to be subjective, individual, which I think really and truly we do well when we bring some individualization into all of the research that we're doing. And we really look at this concept of the N of one. What they found was almost funny. The gains in VO2 max were essentially the same, basically the same across all three groups. So the easy effort, moderate effort, and hard effort. Easy training didn't outperform hard training, and hard training didn't outperform the easy training in terms of the size of improvement. But the detail that actually maybe matters for you, especially if you've got a busy calendar, the group doing the higher intensity work got there with significantly less total training time. So they got the same result, smaller time investment when the effort was harder. So while, yes, eventually, whether you're easy effort, moderate effort, or hard effort, you might all end up at the same destination eventually. If you are shorter on time, bumping that effort up a little bit is maybe going to give you a little more bang for your buck when it comes to the amount of time training. Study two zoomed in even further on sprint interval training specifically and asked how many hard efforts do you actually need inside one workout before you stop getting a bigger return? So, this is sort of the idea that there is diminishing returns, right? We think, oh my gosh, if I could just do more, if I could just do harder, that it would always be better. But there is maybe going to be a point where the effort that you're putting in is actually going to diminish the results that you're getting back. This is the exact minimum effective dose question asked directly in a peer reviewed meta analysis. And the key takeaway is that you do not need a marathon's worth of intervals to move your VO2 max. A small number of genuinely hard efforts is really doing the bulk of the lifting there. So if you're just piling on more sprints past a certain point, you're actually not going to get a proportional return. So again, this is looking at that sustained effort for maybe a shorter period of time, which means that maybe the workout you skipped because you only had 12 minutes instead of 45 might have actually been enough genuinely. So this is a lot of times, decision fatigue is a lot of times what women are dealing with when they come to work with me. There's so much information out there. They're just not sure really how to organize it, how to apply it to their own lives. And this is really what we work to remove inside of our coaching so that you're not standing in your kitchen constantly doing mental math about whether or not, a 12-minute workout would have counted. And there's so many different ways that you can take the work that we're doing here even deeper and apply it. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, just be sure to check the link in the show notes to kind of figure out that next best step for you. Now, here's the study that made headlines a few years back, and I want to correct the headline while I'll tell you about it because the actual data is maybe a little bit more interesting than kind of that clickbaity soundbite. Researchers at McMaster University took a group of sedentary men and split them into two. Now, I want to pause here really quick because this is one of the issues that we run into a lot of times when it comes to research. Granted, we are getting better at having maybe a more balanced representation in research when it comes to these fitness experiments and things like that. But just note that this was done in sedentary men. Obviously, there are differences between men and women biologically. And so we don't always see kind of the same results when it is applied to women. So, again, we are seeing more research done on women, especially kind of throughout the lifespan, which is going to hopefully give us a more complete picture. So, just kind of take this with a grain of salt, but I think there's still going to be some gold in here for us. So, one group did 3 all out 20-second sprints. So, they sprinted for 20 seconds as hard as they can. They did 3 sets of that inside a 10-minute session. They did that just 3 times a week. The other group did 45 minutes of continuous moderate cycling 3 times a week. So we're looking at 3 10-minute sessions, so 30 minutes a week versus, oh my gosh, what is that? 135 minutes. I had to think for a second because gym math. I was thinking about 45-pound plates. So 135 minutes or 2 hours and 15 minutes of continuous moderate cycling 3 times a week. After 12 weeks, both groups improved their peak oxygen uptake by 19%. So that's, a pretty considerable improvement in 12 weeks. They had identical improvement. The sprint group had trained for about 1/5 of the total time when they accounted for all of the minutes training for both groups. So I want to be precise here because the internet turned this into like 1 minute of exercise equals 45 minutes of exercise. Like you could swap them out in kind of the same afternoon. That's not what happened. What happened is that weeks of short, hard sessions produce the same physiological outcome as weeks of long, moderate sessions. It's not magic, it's more about the dose and the intensity training places. But let's sit with that and what that actually might mean for you in your real life on a Tuesday. If you have 10 minutes, and you have the ability to, bust out 3 hard efforts in you, that is legitimate. That's going to give you a boost in health and it's research backed, right? So that is huge. This is not like a second place kind of exercise routine or workout. This is not something necessarily to feel guilty about because it wasn't a full 45 minutes, but it was a real session that's going to move your health needle in a real meaningful way. Now, everything that we just walked through was kind of general exercise science, but here's where I want to bring it in and make it a little more specific to us. We've mentioned Dr. Stacey Sims on the show multiple times. She has spent her career essentially translating exercise research specifically for women and especially for women in perimenopause. Her consistent repeated advice is to really actually pull back on your overall intense cardio volume. So if you're doing a lot of cardio in this life stage and it tends to be, probably upper zone 3, maybe zone 4, to kind of pull back on this and replace the long steady sessions with shorter, harder intervals paired with heavy resistance training. Now, I want to be straightforward with you about what this is. So, this isn't just like one single study with a clean number attached, and we can just kind of have, that black or white answer. It really is more her expert synthesis of the broader research that's been done, the same research that we just actually walked through, but applied specifically to a female body in kind of that midlife era. And what I find genuinely reassuring is that it tends to line up perfectly with everything the studies above already showed us, is that we can get some great results, some, meaningful results moving us in a healthier direction with less volume, more intensity. It still absolutely works. If anything, for this exact season of life, less volume might actually be the smarter default and not the compromise. In fact, we just did a call inside our group coaching program that really talked about stress and cortisol and just the way that we can impact our overall stress response on our bodies through exercise, nutrition, and things like that. So if you're in your 40s or your 50s, if you're reading, all the things out there or hearing about it and just thinking, okay, but does this apply to me? The answer from the experts who specialize in exactly where you're at in this phase of life is they would say yes, possibly more than it potentially applies to anyone else. So let's talk about if we don't apply any of this. If we don't hear this and we just sort of keep operating on, I just need to do more, the more is better model. Maybe you continually are like pushing yourself and stressing yourself out, trying to figure out how you can cram more workout time into your week, but it's not in a way that's sustainable. You keep missing the pieces of the plan and feeling like you're the failure instead of feeling like, man, I'm just somebody right now where my plate is extra full, my life is busy, and I just am constantly going to feel like I'm failing at this if I can't get it all in. You keep quitting somewhere around like week 3, week 4, and then promising to start the following Monday. And then just repeating that cycle, quitting, starting, and stopping. And then feeling like, again, you're the problem, you're the failure. Maybe you just need more motivation, more discipline. You just need to try harder, when maybe it was just like the way that we were approaching fitness in the first place. Maybe it was just, trying to cram more in when we could have been a little bit more strategic about what we were actually doing. That cycle, that starting and stopping, has a name on this podcast, and it really is driven by that all or nothing trap. And it will either happily eat at another year of your life if you let it, or we can intervene and stop that cycle now. But there's a quieter cost that's attached to this. So while you're stuck in that cycle, you're not building the one metric that we opened this episode with, right? The one that's tied to maybe longevity or how well you're able to actually live the life that you have. Not because you're lazy, we've already established that, but because the way that you've been approaching your fitness was never maybe really built around a real human with a real life and real life things constantly coming up. So if you are going to walk away with just one thing today, I want to give you this shift. Your identity does not need to be the woman who does it all and does it all perfectly. Your identity can, in fact, be the woman who shows up for herself in a way that she can actually sustain for the long haul, for years, and not just a few days or a few weeks. Remember the study that we opened the episode with? There was no upper limit of benefit to fitness, but there was also no minimum size requirement to start. If you've only got 10 focused minutes today, that counts. If you can only do it 3 times this week, that counts. And remember, that was backed by real research. It's not some small or like second place version of a real plan. But for a lot of women, this actually is the real plan. And it's the thing that they can stay consistent with, which we know it's going to be that consistency over a long enough period of time is going to be the thing that really moves the needle. And if you hold maybe a faith perspective on this the way I do, then maybe there's something more worth sitting with here too. It's really about being a good steward of the body that you've been given. That was not ever intended to maximize every single hour of your life. Stewardship, rather, is just showing up wisely and consistently, not, pushing yourself to the brim, never resting, and just stumbling through life exhausted and feeling even a little twinge of resentment. There's a version of this that actually looks like rest and sustainability being the responsible choice and not just a sign of laziness. So the permission slip today is simple. You are allowed to maybe do less than what you thought you had to do, and you could still be doing enough to make some massive gains in your overall health. So, your homework for this, if what you need right now is the actual structure, the how, not just the permission slip, that is really what we build inside the Fit and Field coaching. We take exactly the research that we're discussing on the show and build it into a plan that fits that actual life and the time that you have, not the perfect idealized life that you think you need to have in order to be the healthiest, fittest, strongest version of yourself. You can find all the information on the different programs we have or just the different ways you can take what we talk about here deeper by going to thestrongherway.com. The link will also be in the show notes. And if you're not ready for coaching yet, we've got different steps that you can take. So, really, there is something for everybody, no matter where you're starting at. Okay, here is your homework this week. I want you to just pick one thing that we talked about today. And instead of asking, like, how do I fit all of the different things in? Maybe it's like, what is the smallest real life version I can do of this week? What is maybe the amount that I can invest 3 times this week? Is that a 10-minute session? Is that, a 15-minute session? Is that 3 5-minute sessions throughout the day? Whatever it is, I want you to just take some action, go do that small, real version, and then be proud of yourself. Celebrate. Let that be enough. All right, gang, that is what I have for today's episode. If this helped you put down some of that all or nothing cycle and just drama, please send this episode to a friend who might also be drowning in her own all or nothingness. And until next week, we will see you again. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to The Strong Her Way. If you're ready to redefine your relationship with food, exercise, and yourself, remember, it's all about building habits and routines that fit into your busy life without restriction or deprivation. I hope today's episode inspired you to take the next step on your journey to a healthier, happier you. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you found this helpful, please leave a review and share it with other women who need a little extra encouragement. Together, we can all become stronger. Until next time, stay strong and keep moving forward.